Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillah walhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. We begin by praising Allah Azza wa Jal, and we send peace and blessings upon His beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Tonight's episode of the Ramadan Revival series is a special one. And before we begin, I'd like to remind the viewers that our personal recommendation is that no one should be viewing under the age of 12. If you do, however, feel as though your children may be suitable to watch this specific episode based on your own judgment, then we don't have a problem. However, we do recommend that 12 years and over is a suitable age group, inshallah. Another thing that I would like to mention before we begin, inshallah, is that this is most definitely a taboo topic. Without an absolute doubt, it's not a topic that people want to talk about. And it's not a topic that is often addressed in the Muslim community. In saying that, we do realize and recognize that there is a problem in the community. And we do realize that there is a gap that must be filled. And for that reason, inshallah, we are addressing it tonight. So I would like to remind you, as someone that's viewing tonight's episode, that I don't want you to feel as though people will assume that you yourself are someone that is affected by this topic. I want you to be comfortable to comment. Be comfortable to ask questions. You will not be assumed that you yourself are an addict, nor that you are someone that is abusing this specific topic that we want to address. I want you to be comfortable, inshallah. In saying that, we also have an anonymous option to ask questions. There is a phone number on a phone that I'm holding here with me tonight, which inshallah you can send your questions through or comments through anonymously if you did not want them to go on Facebook. Pornography or pornography addiction is tonight's topic. And pornography is a drug as addictive as heroin. And I'm going to quote something here tonight, inshallah. Pornography is a drug as addictive as heroin. It is free of charge, widely available, accessible at the click of a button, and most countries don't have any laws or regulations against it. So it's flooded the market like a tsunami, taking everything and anything down with it. My brothers and sisters, we live in a hypersexualized climate, in a hypersexualized world, whereby everything has been affected. The pornography industry or hypersexuality has affected and has been introduced into almost every facet of life. There isn't a movie that's being released today that doesn't have some sort of sexuality in it. A TV show, promotions, billboards, signages, whether they be using half-naked men or half-naked women. It is definitely a problem that is moving so quick that it is almost near difficult or near impossible to control. We live in a world where the consumption of pornography is at an increasing rate. The figures behind this addiction is absolutely frightening. It affects men, it affects women, it affects husbands and wives, it affects the old and the young. No one is free from pornography addiction. It is a real problem in our community. And now in the current climate with COVID-19, we are finding that the addiction and the viewing and consumption of pornography is increasing even more. So much so that the industry has recognized that people have so much time on their hands to the extent that they're offering free premium subscriptions so that you can sit back at home and view this filthy stuff. Ikhwani, the purpose of tonight's discussion is so that we highlight the reality of this problem and inshallah ta'ala aim to provide practical tips on how to address this issue. It's not going away. And our kids as young as 4 and 5 and 6 are attached to tablets, iPads, computers, whatever it may be. This problem is real and it's very accessible. And with me tonight, inshallah, to help address these issues and to help us understand the reality and how to deal with these issues is Sheikh Omar El-Ghaz. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. It's a pleasure to have you with us. Sheikh Omar El-Ghaz, he is the head of the Da'wah department at the UMA. He deals with a lot of cases from the community. Some cases, unfortunately, are cases of pornography. And I know some of them are referred to our brother Deen Mousad here. And Deen, I welcome you on tonight as well to the show. Our brother Deen Mousad, he's a behavior addiction counselor. And he's also got a certificate, which I'm sure he'll talk about. He's a qualified behavior addiction counselor who deals with pornography on a day-to-day basis with pornography cases. He's also the founder of Brothers in Need. And before I move on, Brother Deen, I actually want to ask, what exactly is a behavior addiction counselor?
Barakallah Feek for that beautiful introduction. I think you hit home with everything.
Have I left anything for you to say?
Tabarakallah, mate. You said it all.
Allah barak feek.
Inshallah, so yes, I am a counsellor, a registered counsellor with the ACA, which is Australia's peak body here for counsellors. Behaviour addiction, in a general sense, is addictions like visual addictions, like pornography, gaming addiction, gambling. So these would be counted as behaviours. So in a nutshell, to make it very easy and simple for those to understand, this is what we'll be talking about today, and in specific, pornography addiction, inshallah.
Inshallah. So do you actually assist and aid with the other sort of behavioral addictions, or do you focus primarily on the pornography industry?
So I think when I first started this in 2017, I targeted pornography quite heavily. So I'm known as that guy that only deals with pornography, but I do also talk about gaming addiction, and I have clients for that, and also with gambling.
Gaming addiction, subhanallah, which Sheikh, I think, has actually been classified as a condition now, hasn't it? It's officially a condition.
It's officially a condition by the World Health Organization.
Allahu Akbar.
Last year, I think.
That's
Allahu
correct.
Akbar. That's what Fortnite did.
After a 9-year-old girl peed herself so she won't get off the game.
Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Deen, I think it is important that we turn our attention to you now, inshallah, to maybe highlight the reality of this problem. I know you've got the statistics, I know you've got the figures. I want you to bring them out to the viewers tonight, inshallah.
So brace yourself, guys. Some of these stats, will blow you out of the water. I don't want to overload our audience with statistics. I'm sure for those that have seen the talks and the workshops that we've done before, you're well acquainted. But if you're not, inshallah, I just wanted to touch upon a few statistics in short. So one of them is in terms of the viewage on one particular website. We're not going to mention the name of this website, but certain websites, they produce annual reports every single year. So similar to a business that produces, reports, this company, amongst many companies that produce this content, they have an annual report, which they showcase to their stakeholders. In 1 year, in 2019, 42 billion people jumped on this one website. Do you believe that? 42 billion on one website. That's crazy. If you break that down, it's about 115 million a day. 115 million viewers in 1 day on one website.
And that's multiple videos.
This is multiple videos. Imagine Australia's a population of 25 million. You've got Canada and Poland put together. The amount of people on there, it still doesn't equal to 115 million people. Just to give you an understanding of one of these stats. Also, what I wanted to touch upon, in America in 2010, so the figures are a touch outdated, but you can well imagine now over the span of time, it would increase. Statistically speaking, 56% of divorces in America every year, right, is because one spouse, at the very least, is addicted to pornography. Now, have a guess, Omar, how many people get divorced in America every single year?
You're going to make me sound stupid when I do this guess, so I'm going to go crazy. Let's just say 5 million.
That's a touch crazy. Just drop it down a few million. It's in the million.
2 million.
So it's 1 million. So
Allahu
1
Akbar.
million every single year get divorced in America. Now 56% of that is due to one of the partners having an addiction to pornography. So imagine over 500,000 cases, right? The divorce is due to watching this content. So usually we hear, you know, it's all right if I get married, this will solve my porn problem. In this case, and I'm sure with Sheikh Omar, with the cases that come through to him, you know, I'm sure you have a mixed bag of cases, Sheikh. Is that correct?
Wallah, that's one of the actual points or topics I wanted to mention today was the misconceptions. That's one of them. That I'll stop this when I get married, or it'll get better when I get married, or it'll get easier when I get married. And not only does it not help, not only does it break their marriage, it drives a person out of control. He becomes worse than he was before, or she was before marriage.
I think it's important that we do elaborate on that later on, inshallah, because the people, you know, subhanAllah, subconsciously people feed themselves things just to satisfy themselves temporarily. But the reality is they're only building more of a blockage in their way that's just going to be a real issue later on, inshallah. Dean, I think you should have some more stats.
Yes, so the stats once again are alarming. There were even in 2014, I believe, Sydney University done also a research, around 2,000, if I'm not mistaken, 2,000 people done like a survey, done research, they had research done on them. Out of these 2,000 people, right, half of them, this is in now Sydney, this is localized data, half of them watch pornography from 30 minutes to 3.5 hours every single day.
Wow.
Imagine every single day, people are watching pornography for as little as half an hour to as long as 3.5 hours. So imagine you've got school, imagine you've got work, imagine you've got university, and then as a hobby, what are you doing? You're not playing sports in the park,
Definitely
you're watching
not doing
pornography.
homework.
That's exactly right. So this is, Allahu Akbar, the data that keeps coming through, and it gets updated every year, and the trajectory is just getting worse and worse and worse.
The thing is, it's free, right? Free access. So anybody can, you don't even have to have money.
That's correct.
You don't even have to have a bank card. You could be as young as owning a computer for that matter, or an iPad.
And like you mentioned, you know, now we've got, you know, youth as young as 4, 5, and 6 with unlimited access to Wi-Fi, tablets, computers, devices. It could be something as simple as unintentional consumption of this. And we had an article that came out by Channel 7 News a couple of days ago. Now with this COVID-19, everyone has been doing, you know, stuff on Zoom, right? Lessons on Zoom. In Queensland, Year 5 students had their Zoom classroom hacked into, their virtual classroom hacked into, and pornography was showcased by someone who was anonymous. So an anonymous user jumped in onto a Year 5 classroom, virtual classroom, and just flooded them with pornography images.
They force it onto us. It's
Yeah.
look, today even if you download a kids app, a cartoon app for your kids, it's got advertisements
That's right.
that pop up.
That's right.
They force you into it. The kid doesn't know what he's doing. He's pressing the game. He's trying to press something.
Even cartoon get Sheikh. Even cartoon, whether it be apps, games, or just TV shows, subhanallah, yani, the way they portray adult men and women is not exactly the most decent way.
They know what they're doing.
Exactly. Yani, wallahi, it's actually very, very scary, man.
And I wanted to showcase
Very
another
scary.
statistic. Seeing that you're talking about cartoons, that's actually one of the most sought after genres of pornography.
You know, I wanted to ask you that question.
Yeah.
Because usually people become twisted in their brain, right? After extensive consumption.
Yes, so the behavior escalates. You know, so I've got clients, for example, that have come through, they'll come through crying. They'll say, Dean, we would have consumed pornography that was normal, for example, male and female. Then over a span of time, it might be multiple males and a female. Then before you know it, I had one case in recent times, he said, I don't even want to watch this content. I'm watching content of someone, a male urinating on a female to get off. The mind is so desensitized that they're starting to resort, like you said, to things that are out of the norm. So, you know, cartoons, and especially another article came out, speaking of articles, I think it's a young girls show, the Frozen. So even a lot of porn sites are using images of, you know, Frozen, I think her name's Elsa, to promote this kind of filth to people who are younger.
Because they're just going to go with the flow.
Allahu Akbar. When the ulama, they mention that even a newborn that's first opened his eyes, starting to look, the mother and father shouldn't take their clothes off in front of them because it imprints on their brain. Even a newborn, in the mahd, in the bassinet, not even in the cradle yet, in the bassinet, you shouldn't, have intercourse while that child is in the room, because if he looks, it imprints, and later on the effects are seen.
And we're going to get to the effects, inshallah, very soon. But Sheikh, I wanted to ask you, being a Muslim, like, I'll give you an example. Someone that isn't really practicing Islam, right? If a person came up to him and swore at Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, how's this guy going to react? He's going to lose it. He's going to defend Islam because he loves Islam. And in reality, we feel like we're also protected by Islam. We feel as though we're protected by Islam, even though we do nothing for Allah and His deen, right? But sometimes as Muslims, we feel like we can't fall into something wrong. Is it right as a Muslim to feel like I'm immune from this problem?
SubhanAllah. Look, where do I start with that question? This action, as a Muslim, if I truly believe in Islam and I want Allah Azza wa Jal to protect me through Islam, through my deen, then I have to obey its laws. What do I mean by that? Everything that Allah Azza wa Jal ordered us to do, only ordered us to do because it's going to benefit. And everything that He forbid us from doing, He forbid because it's going to harm. So me actually claiming I believe in Islam, then doing something that Allah promised harms me, then saying I'll be immune, I'll be all right, that's very dangerous. That's an indirect saying that, like, you were wrong. Astaghfirullah al-Azim. So no, we're not immune whatsoever. When we do harm, we will face the consequences, and that's a mercy from Allah. Allah Azza wa Jal mentions, the Prophet ﷺ mentions that this ummah is marhuma. Why? Its punishment is in the dunya, not in the akhirah.
No.
So Allah Azza wa Jal, when we do these actions, we will be punished and we will face the consequences. And I'm sure Dean will touch upon what it does to the mind and how it builds certain pathways, to the extent where Mashaykh are getting calls today that I can't sleep with my wife unless I play this thing. Wives are calling the Mashaykh and telling them, my husband's making me do 1, 2, 3, 4 in order for him to be able to reach climax. Husbands are complaining about their wives, they won't do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for me. It becomes, the consequences, regardless of what you believe in your heart, the consequences of something which Allah made haram are going to occur.
Yeah.
I might add on that, Barakallahu Feek, Sheikh, and we were talking about this before, subhanAllah, it's important to note that pornography, it's a gateway into these problems. So some people may think, pornography, I'll watch it when I'm at school, what's really the problem? I'll watch it every now and then, my friends showed it to me, I went to their house. It's not going to be a real problem. It's not like I'm doing heroin or ice or drugs, right? These big drugs that we know that can destroy lives in a heartbeat. Same as pornography. And once we truly understand the implications and the ramifications of consuming pornography, we'll know if this comes up to us intentionally or unintentionally to turn away from it.
And look, I think we're going to touch on that soon, inshallah. We're going to talk about the effects of pornography from both a psychological perspective and even an Islamic perspective, whether it be on Iman or the heart or whatever it may be, spiritually. We'll also go on to talk about things like parents' roles in how to control or at least help youth that are consuming this. Not saying that it's only ever youth, but I mean, it is a large fraction of the people that do consume. Sheikh, we have 2 questions that have come through YouTube, which I believe are directed towards you. The first one's a bit vague. Does ghusl have to be performed? So I'd say maybe answer that, Sheikh, in 2 different ways. Perhaps one, if you view this haram content, do you have to perform ghusl? And another one is, perhaps I think the question would, another question we can ask is, if a person ejaculates perhaps after watching this content.
So watching it without climax, without ejaculation does not require ghusl. However, obviously ejaculating, that would require ghusl. In Ramadan, it would break your fast and require ghusl. Is that the one question? Or
yeah, there's another question that's coming as well, inshallah. I just didn't want to answer that exactly as it's written because it was a bit vague, so I added a bit to it, inshallah. The other question, and again, I do want to say to the audience, this is one of those topics where, unfortunately, we have to be as outright as possible. We can't really beat around the bush, nor can we reword things. So forgive us if something is too explicit, but it's the nature of the topic, inshallah. So the question, Sheikh, does pre-ejaculation invalidate one's wudu or fast, whether by physical touching of self, dreams, or by other means such as spouse, verbally expressing their love, يعني, in any way, shape or form? So pre-ejaculation.
Pre-ejaculation breaks the wudu. Anything that exits the private parts breaks the wudu. However, it doesn't break the fast. So what breaks the fast is the ejaculation itself and not the pre-ejaculation. But as well, that you must know that when that does occur, then the what's called the place where it occurred, if you touch the underwear or whatever, has to also be washed and cleaned before they can make the wudu and pray or whatever it may be.
Barakallah feek, Sheikh. Dane, this one's for yourself, inshallah. A question has come anonymously. So the question is, I know of brothers, alhamdulillah, that have been cured from pornography, which already is amazing, but still suffer from masturbation and have tried everything to get rid of it. They are unmarried and struggle to stop masturbation. Are there any cures for this? And Sheikh, I know you may be able to add something to this as well, inshallah, but I'll start with yourself then.
I was going to say, Sheikh, feel free to jump in at any time. You know, that question, I heard the word everything, right? And when I hear the word everything as a statement, not everything has been tried, right? We had a question come through from a sister with a sister counselor who's helping her through her porn addiction. And she sent a message, you know, to a few counselors, Ustaz Wa'il, Ibrahim, myself. And she said, I believe that no one can help me, you know, beat my addiction to pornography, right? So I've tried everything underneath the sun, and I believe that there's nothing left to help me. From my experience, I find that, you know, the response from the counselor, the response from the sheikh, the response from the professional, right, it needs to understand that this person, you know, is reaching out for help, and they feel like because they've tried a few different techniques, a few different tricks, even if they may have tried it for a long period of time, they feel like that's it. I've tried everything, and it's impossible to get over this. There are a few tips that we can talk about, and I don't want to go into that too much now, because I know at the end
that, inshallah,
we've got a lot of tips for that brother or sister, you know, and anyone that is commenting, asking questions like this. I urge you to stay on till the very end. Inshallah, have your notebook out. I will be giving you know, about 5 to 10 tips on things that you can do that you may not have thought of, that inshallah can help.
Excellent.
Sheikh, do you have anything to add?
Well, I would add to that is seek the help of a professional. Two different medicines with the same with the same composition. One can harm you, one can benefit you, depending on how much of each is given. So what the professional will do, he'll identify. So you would have tried 10 different things to help you off this addiction. However, just putting them in the right order or using them in the right amount, or sometimes a number of things together and a number of things separate, that's the actual way to overcome this practically, obviously, other than the dua and turning to Allah Azza wa Jal, the only one that could help. So yes, people, they shy away from that. They shy away from seeking professional help. Look, do it in a way when no one knows. Do it in a way, in a place where no one's going to know. Do whatever you have to do, but don't ever say that I've tried everything and it can't be stopped, because you don't want to lose hope in Allah.
Of course.
Allah.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, there's no one that's going to turn to Allah Azza wa Jal where Allah's going to turn him away empty. So inshallah ta'ala, make sure that you don't lose hope. Make sure that you don't use that word everything, as our brother Dane just mentioned, because there's always a way, and it's your test at the end of the day. Allah Azza wa Jal is going to test you to see how hard or how much you really want to overcome this addiction. And that's something that we must recognize, inshallah. And here we have a sheikh that's telling you turn to the professionals for help. So don't ever feel like it's a shame. I mean, you know what? It's actually a good thing to be ashamed of a sin. Be proud that you're ashamed of it, but don't ever let that shame be a reason for you not to turn and seek help. Then, I think we should move on to the effects that, not just pornography. I think we've spoken about pornography, and I know pornography is the subject, but pornography is extreme in comparison to just viewing images or billboards, Sheikh, like promotions, advertisements, whatever it may be, you know, or even seeing something in a movie, man. something as small as that, where it doesn't go to the extreme, but it still has that effect.
But
So-
is it small?
Exactly, but this is the thing. So we want to be talking about all of these things in as well as pornography, so that the viewer or the audience don't assume that only pornography is the problem. Rather, everything that's explicit is a problem. So if we do talk about the effects, please give us the effects on an individual and then the effects on families.
That's an excellent point. We do live in a very hypersexualized society, like you mentioned before, whether it's billboards. If you want to go buy a suit for Eid, right? If you want to go buy a shirt, for example, and you go to certain shops, we see how sometimes some of the people that are inside these shops dress. I used to work in retail myself, and you'll see, unfortunately, because we used to work on commission basis, like they say, sex sells, right? Less is more, right? So we need to understand that, like you mentioned, anything, whether it's a photo, whether it's something accidental, like it did with Imam Shafi'i, right, where he looked accidentally, right, at the bottom half of a lady's leg, shin, her calf, what that did to his memorization, right? So, and this was an innocent, right? Imagine us, we don't do this innocently. We may do this intentionally over and over and over again. So it's not just pornography, my brothers and sisters. It could be static images, right? And this builds, sins on the heart. It builds darkness on the heart. And this can turn into a perpetual sin where it's done over and over and over again and affect you on an individual level, where you could start feeling shame, you could start feeling guilt. And this is a problem because, like you said, these people might feel shame and guilt, and that will make them, over the span of time, despair in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we don't want, like you mentioned, the sin to make you lose hope in Allah. If anything, that sin should bring you closer to Allah Azza wa Jal. And the same also goes whether you're an individual, in a family unit, on a societal level. So viewing this content, whether it's a video, whether it's a photo, we need to be very mindful of this stuff. And we mentioned before as well, sexting, for example. This has become something that's culture. It's become like a culture in Islamic schools, in normal schools, where they'll send an image of one another, naked, partially naked to one another, and this builds sexual frustration. This builds sexual tension, and then for a period of time it may be watched and nothing happen. You don't act upon this sexual tension and sexual frustration, but then over the span of time, right, after the mind becomes desensitized, then you want to escalate the behavior. And then we have the problems that arise from it. It's no longer just a look, but then you end up acting upon this. Wallahu alam. Sheikh Omar.
It's all the eyesight's the gateway to the heart, right? And there's a hadith that's weak, but I want to mention the analogy that's given in this hadith, where it states that the look, al-nadra, is a poisoned arrow of shaitan that strikes the heart. Now look at that analogy. Whether the hadith is sahih, da'if, I'm not arguing that, I'm not saying it's a hadith, but look at that analogy. When I look, the poison arrow, when it strikes someone, even if you pull the arrow out, the effect stays after that. It may still harm, affect, and even kill that person after the arrow is removed. Similarly, when we look and that heart is poisoned, even after we've stopped, even if we've stopped it for a year, sometimes in sujood, sometimes in the bedroom with his wife, sometimes wherever he is, that image will continue to plague and play on his mind. And Allah Azza wa Jalla, He says, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu udkhulu fi silmi kaffa, 6 emphasis on that word, enter into the deen completely, وَلَا تَتَّبِعُوا خُطُوَاتِ الشَّيْطَانِ, and do not follow the footsteps of the shaitan. Because that one look will lead to then a smile, will lead to then a speech, and then will lead to then to something else. Just like that, just one static image will turn into a movie, will turn into, I know brothers who from anime. From anime, they told me it's called, I don't know what it's called, there's something that they actually, it's part of each fan service or fan, I don't know what it is. Apparently they show the characters in a certain way in order to keep the audience. So that will lead to normal movies, and then that will lead to pornography, and then that will lead to, and then he's out on the street trying to find someone to enact this out with. What happens with the mind eventually, his goal or her goal will literally become to fulfill that desire rather than to reach Jannah, rather than their deen, rather than whatever it is. It will literally become that goal. So step by step, step by step. It's always step by step. He'll stop, he'll repent, she'll repent, and then it'll start from one trigger point to the next trigger point to the next trigger point until eventually you're back in that thing again. And
And I think at the end it's important to talk about the steps of Tawbah, Sheikh. That's something that I think should be part of your take-home message. But on that, you know what amazes me? When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, He talks about lowering the gaze. Allah Azza wa Jal mentions lowering the gaze because He wants to cut anything that could lead on that from its root. And that's something that we must realize. Allah Azza wa Jal didn't talk about looking and then talk about touching and then talk about khalas, lowering the gaze, because we know that from the absolute root it's going to lead to a problem if it becomes a habit. And Allah Azza wa Jal stops it there.
it's also a sign that this is one of those things that you can't let play out because they will result in bad. So other actions in Islam will be cut at the root, and some will be left like to play out until a certain point, and that's where mankind, Allah Azza wa Jalla knows the outcome of everything. He knows that with this specific sin, majority or a huge amount, a vast amount of people will not be able to control themselves past this point, so He cuts it there. Allah Azza wa Jalla is the all-knowing, the all-wise, knows the ghaib, the outcome of everything. So if we could control ourselves beyond that, or the vast majority, or the like a huge portion of the society could control themselves past that, then Allah would have put the boundary past that.
Yeah.
Just like alcohol. Just like alcohol. He cuts it off from the root, not even be anywhere near it. Not just don't taste it, not anywhere near it, because He knows beyond that, there's no coming back.
There's going to be a problem.
So it does show it's the magnitude or the
impact,
danger.
The impact that this
The danger
specific
of
sin,
this specific sin, yeah.
We see as well in the Quran that you mentioned, Sheikh, in Surah Al-Isra, you know, Allah Azza wa Jalla says, and do not go near zina. You know, وَلَا تَقْرَبُوا zina. Do not even go near it. Because why? If you do go near it,
You're in it.
you're going to get reeled in. Step by step, step by step, step by step. He could have said, do not engage in this, for example, but in this specific verse, He said, don't even go near it.
And what's zina? Isn't looking the zina of the eyes?
SubhanAllah.
Zina
Yeah.
has many forms. Even speaking, even listening, and even the eyes. The eyes are a form of zina. So looking is a form of zina. Don't go even next to any form of zina, subhanAllah.
Yes.
Allahu Akbar. Wallahi, we are in so much danger, man. And no one's free. Let's be real. No one's free of this. Like, everyone is exposed. Everyone. Wallahi, yani, you can step outside the masjid and the car could be driving past and wallahi, you could be exposed. We have to really be careful. And what's important, I think, after someone does, whether it's intentional or unintentional, is just istighfar, man. The importance of istighfar. Just follow up a bad action with a good one. Let it wipe away. Let it wipe itself away. So Allah Azza wa Jal will forgive. There's no doubt Allah Azza wa Jal will forgive a sincere repentance. And we will talk about repentance. But I think before we get there, inshallah, I think we've made it very clear to the audience that's watching that the effects of pornography is real. And that if you do get caught up in it, you could really be in trouble. So without an absolute doubt, the best thing to do is to absolutely avoid. And one of the tips that's already been given is to lower your gaze. Lower your gaze wherever you can, ikhwani.
Even at home on the TV that's in front of the family and the kids.
Yeah.
Wallahi, my dear parents, I'm begging you, please, don't think that you're sitting down watching just a PG-rated movie with your son sitting there at 11 and 12 years old and he's feeling nothing. Wallahi, it's playing on his mind. That daughter, wallahi, young as 10 and 11 and 12, as young as 8 and 9, they follow a certain singer, a certain actor because they like him already. They're attracted already. It doesn't have to be the looks. It can be just the
behavior,
whatever appeals, subhanAllah.
Yeah.
Please, I'm begging you, don't think it does nothing. If you're going to sin, at least hide it and sin it in your bedroom. Don't expose the kids to what? Play something else, add something else, watch something else, read something else, teach him his deen, fortify his iman, whatever it may be. And that's one of the points I want to talk about, because there's studies that have been done that have linked pornography, watching pornography, to atheism. And I'll bring the statistics here. That's why everything that we're saying is not a drop in the ocean, because these are all sins. Imagine your son or your daughter leaves Islam, and part of the process was viewing this material. And I'll mention the studies that were done, inshallah, when
I think it is the time, Sheikh, because the next thing we wanted to talk about is the parents' responsibilities in assisting and monitoring their children. And I think the thing I wanted to ask you is, obviously in Islam we have principles, and one of those principles is the trust between parents and children. How can a parent balance that trust with watching over their children's well-being, I guess?
Wallah, trust in Allah first. Trust in Allah and His rulings first before we trust in our kids. Allah Azza wa Jal, everything He forbid because it's going to harm. Let me trust in Allah and forbid that on my son and my daughter first, before I trust that they won't do this or they won't do that, or it won't affect them in this way or won't affect them in that way. I'm not trying to downplay the sin. I'm not trying to downplay the sin of this action. It's a very dangerous sin, and it's a sin that could be more detrimental than others, because it's a sin that's hidden. And we know the hadith of Prophet ﷺ that a person could, it tells the companions that a person will have mountains upon mountains, Jabal Tuhama, worth of hasanat, and in the akhirah, Allah Azza wa Jalla will pound it into dust. Then the companions asked, who is this, Ya Rasulullah? Prophet ﷺ said, it's like you, and he prays the night like you. But the difference was when every time they were alone, they crossed the boundaries of Allah Azza wa Jal, they sinned. Allah Azza wa Jal says, يَسْتَخْفُونَ مِنَ النَّاسِ وَلَا يَسْتَخْفُونَ مِنَ اللَّهِ هُوَ مَعَهُمْ أَيْنَمَا كَانُوا. يعني they fear the sight of people, but they don't fear the sight of Allah Azza wa Jal. Allah is the most insignificant of the watchers over them. So it is a very dangerous sin. But my dear brothers and sisters in Islam, wallahi, it is nothing compared to this action actually leading to kufr and leading to people leaving the Islam. So what happened was, and I can give you the details online, inshallah. In a recent study published in the National Institute of Health, a couple of sociologists, in an article called "Seeing is Not Believing," tried to explain how pornography addiction affects religious faith. They found shocking results. They found that pornography has a number one, secularizing effect on the viewer. Number two, they found that the increased viewing of pornography causes a disease in one's feeling of closeness to God. We hear that again and again. Sheikh, I'm a hypocrite. Sisters, Sheikh, I'm a hypocrite. I do 1, 2, 3 here and I do 1, 2, 3 there. That's one. That's number two. That's number three, a decrease in the frequency of prayer. Whoever's been a teacher, whoever's dealt with young boys, every single time you ask them, come pray, what do they say? I need a shower. A decrease, and that's just practically, not even spiritually. Just practically, just physically. So that decrease in the frequency of prayer. Number four, a decrease in the frequency of religious service attendance. I can't get my son or my daughter to leave their computer and come with me to the mosque for the life of me. I've tried everything, I've spoken to them, I've advised them, what are they doing on those computers? Number five, a decrease in the importance of religion in one's life. Yani this person's senses have become so overwhelmed by these actions that the goal actually changes from akhirah to dunya and fulfilling and enacting these roles. Number six, and this is the most important one, an increase in doubts about one's faith. This is a study done in America. They found that it puts doubts in a person's heart about his faith, and it's caused, and it affects, everyone regardless of the gender, males, females, equally, and it has a greater impact on the youth, so the teenagers are at a higher risk of experiencing these effects. This is the effect of this drug on our iman. This is where it's leading. It's leading to us or our youth questioning their deen when they go to university, and it's surrounding them. They question their deen when everything's open, when there's no more haya, when subhanallah, nothing's taboo. And my desires, I'm fulfilling them and I'm trying to fulfill them. That's what I'm running after. It becomes, that's my Lord instead of Allah Azza wa Jal. So as a parent, I have to be aware of this. You can't be naive. We've had a brother, can you imagine, a parent called up the Sheikh and told him, I can't believe you exposed my son to ghusl at the age of 10 or 11 or whatever it is, 12. It was a class, like a year 7, year 8 class, and it wasn't young. my son doesn't, it's too early for him, he shouldn't know this stuff, and so on. So, wallahi, that same kid was already seeing the Muslim counselor about a pornography addiction. My son doesn't do nothing from the bedroom, from his study to the living room and back to his study. He doesn't leave his room, and he's got free access on his computer in his room. What's he doing? We can't be naive. We can't think, oh, he's young or she's young. There's many ahadith. Wallah, I don't want to keep going too long. The hadith where the Prophet ﷺ called the people a shaitan and a shaitana. The young girl that exposed the Sahaba, she got up and she said, yes, Ya Rasulullah, the men are doing it and the women are doing it. What were they doing? They were speaking about their sexual relations in front of other people. The young girl, Fatat, 10, 11, 12, got up and said, yes, Ya Rasulullah, the men are doing it and the women are doing it. What does that show? I mean, she was paying attention. She was learning. She was understanding. Same thing with the movie. She's got all these desires and hormones exploding as she's reaching puberty. And you're showing a movie that would make a rock's heart melt in it because of the love story. What do you think is going to happen to those, to that fire? It's gonna fuel it and it's gonna rage out of control. So as parents, Allah, I don't know what you have to do, how you're going to do it, but these things being watched at home in front of the family together are affecting. We're getting case after case after case, and each and every single one says it was the first time it was with my parents watching a movie. The first time it was with my friends watching cartoons. The first time it was with this, it was with that. 9 years old. 9 years old. A brother is already exposing his younger brother to pornography. 9 years old.
Wow. And I want us to make mention of something else. You mentioned it before. About a singer. You were saying, some people might, listen or watch a singer because they know they might be immersed by this person's look, for example. We have to understand as well the power of music. Music now, it's not like what it was maybe in the 40s and the 50s and the 60s, where it was just, musical instruments and no words. The words of today in music videos, music clips, what do you think they're talking about? They're talking about sex. They're talking about relationships between males and females. Not halal relationships, they're not talking about marriage. This also, from a research perspective, and also with clients that I speak to, I see a lot of people that are trying to fight their addiction with porn. They'll go well without porn for a period of time, and then I'll ask them a random question. Do you still listen to music by any chance? Most of the time they still do. And so this fuels what's inside here. When they're listening to songs day and night, talking about interactions between males and females, this is a big problem. So it's not just the viewing through the eyes, but it's the consumption through the ears as well.
You know, the reality of that, Dane, as well, is when someone is listening to music and they're so immersed in it, they actually don't even know what they're listening to anymore. How many times you find a song will be outright kufr, outright kufr, like
You only live once.
whatever it is, a lot worse, like there's no God that can help me, there's no, whatever it may be, and we're singing these words because we're so caught up with maybe there's one line that I loved, so I'll memorize the whole song, and wallahi, you don't even think about what you say anymore. You forget what's happening in this song, just because I love the singer, and you know what, I love other songs. We can actually fall into really, really dangerous waters from music. And barakallah fiqh for bringing that up. Although it seems like it's got nothing to do with the subject, we're finding that all these external factors, if you even want to call them external, contribute.
Zina of the ears.
There you go.
The hadith.
There you go.
Keep away from all forms of zina. The zina of the eyes, zina of the ears, zina of the mouth. So hands and feet can commit zina. Walking towards the zina. Touching. Texting, send me naked pics of yourself. These are all forms of zina,
Allahu Akbar.
and they all, what's it called? The gateways to the heart.
Allahu Akbar. I think it's probably become extremely obvious that parents have a huge role in helping or perhaps guiding, mentoring their children. But would you say that maybe there are some practical tips that you can give to parents perhaps in how to do it in a balanced way?
It's a very good point. Yes, parents are part of the solution. They've been part of the problem. Now it's time that they become part of the solution. And yes, they can do so by giving their children, their sense of autonomy, because they still want to feel like, I'm a growing teenager, I've hit puberty, I'm 15, 16, right? I'm my own person. I've built that personality. So you'll see from a lot of these youth, males and females, they'll come up and say, well, listen, I want this and I want that. My friend has this, my friend has that, but my cousin has this, but my sibling has this. So what parents can do on a practical level, we can download software filtration systems. So a parent can download a software filtration system, and this gets implemented from the top down. So this isn't just targeted for the youth, right, for their kids. This is on all devices. This is devices on their own devices, their spouses' devices, and all their children's devices. What this can do and what it does, you can have different settings on there. For example, if you want to make sure that certain content doesn't pop up, whether it's gambling, right? A lot of gambling apps now are popping up, right? Whether it's pornography, music, right? So these software systems will filter all of this content out. Another thing that I recommend.
So leading by example, even the parents.
Excellent. And this is what we should do. We should lead, right? We should be role models. And this is how the Prophet of Allah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, this was him, right? When it came to building his mosque, he didn't say to the companions, you guys go build my mosque and I'm going to relax. You know, when he was on the battlefield, he didn't stay back and you guys go forward. No, in everything he did, he led by example. Even when it came to him sitting in a circle with his companions and his daughter would walk in, right? Fatima, radiallahu anha, he'd stand up, kiss her on the forehead, and she'd sit on his spot. There was a love leading by example. He didn't tell the companions, do this to your children and they will love you. No, he led by example.
They say that kids do 90% of what you do and only 10% of what you say.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can also, the TV, the laptop, any computer, it should be in the living room.
In a shared place.
In a shared place. No such thing as keep it in my bedroom. This should not happen. It should not happen.
That means don't buy each kid a tablet and a phone and leave it with them at night. Have one or two in the house that can be shared by everyone and maybe left in the bedroom, in the living room.
Yeah.
What about at night? All those
thing.
devices.
Myself personally, what I do since Sheikh Wael Ibrahim came out in 2017, he came out once with the UMA and a few other mosques. He said, lead by example, keep the phone or any devices outside in the kitchen. Since 2017, I do that. Guess who follows me? My wife. And inshallah, my children, when they grow older, they'll do the same. Why? Because my phone is outside. So I'm not going to be on my WhatsApp, I'm not going to be on my emails, I'm not going to be on my social media in my bedroom. No. When it comes into the bedroom, phone stays outside on charge, and my wife will follow suit and my children will follow suit. And that way then you'll always get, but how am I going to wake up for Fajr? My alarm clock's on my phone. Habibi,
Buy an alarm
you
clock.
go to Big W and you buy a $10
$4
alarm clock. There you go, I'm being generous, $10 bucks, buy a $4 one.
You know, I've actually spoken to a sheikh recently where he actually told me he implements a no technology hour right at home. And it's usually like the last hour of the night. So what he'll do is he'll get a basket and he'll collect all the devices at home. TVs are switched off, collect the remotes, whatever. Put them in a basket, put them somewhere. The last hour you spend it together as a family, whatever it be, if it's ta'aleem, if it's just simply engaging with your kids and your wife and having a conversation, and then everyone goes to bed. So there are many ways. There are many ways that I think the key thing that we're looking for here, or the key thing to point out, is that we don't want to leave people alone with accessibility.
Most definitely.
Leaving people alone, being vulnerable, being weak, because we don't know what happened in our child's life today at school if it doesn't tell us. We don't know what someone's spoken to, and maybe they don't have their phones at school. So the minute they get home, they're trying to find that 3-second gap where they can quickly search that website that they heard, you know.
That's what
so
it takes.
We don't know. We don't know. We really don't know what's happening. And inshallah, maybe something that a parent should, or definitely something that a parent should focus on, is that relationship with their child. You know, that friendship, that trust, you know, and try to be their friend. Try to be the person that they want to tell you everything. Because inshallah, if they are exposed to something and they're unsure about it, most likely they're going to tell you first before they go to something else. So be available for your children. I think that's something that is
I do want to
extremely
add something
important.
to that. We have this mentality sometimes, be all or end all. Black or white, all in or all out. My dear brothers and sisters in Islam and parents, don't say this won't work. Don't say there's no way. Everywhere they go, they're exposed anyway. What's not exposing them at home going to make a difference? That thinking is so dangerous, it's not even funny. It's destroyed our ummah. A lot of the people today, you come up to him, tell them, come help out with this, do this. Wallah, I'm busy. Habibi, give 1 hour. Like, what's 1 hour going to do? You find, I'm talking 20, 30, 50, 60, 70% of people that come across, black or white. The Prophet ﷺ was always balanced. The Prophet ﷺ was always balanced. Try one thing, try another, try them again together. Go to a different person, try a third method. Don't give up. Don't say it won't work. Don't say that I don't want to say anything out of line, but a lot of what the situation that the Muslims are in today is because the previous generation and the one before that said, oh, there's no way to do this thing other than this way. That's why we don't have halal banking. That's why we don't have halal insurance. That's why we don't have halal, you start, saddidu wa qaribu. Cover as many gaps as you can and come as close as you can. We try one method, we try two, we try three. It doesn't matter if they're exposed to everything outside. I limit it in the household. I don't say that, what's this extra going to do? Bil'aks, if the household is where they get, if subconsciously in a center or a mosque or in the household that they're shown that this thing is wrong, this thing is all right. When someone for the first time in their lives come, and this has happened, they come up to them telling this is haram, they can't accept that. They start fighting and arguing against their own deen. No, my parents always used to do it. They used to let me do it. Wallah, the mosque al-fulani or the Sheikh al-fulani, I saw him doing it. It can't be right. So they're actually, look what they're doing. They're actually disputing against their deen, against a clear-cut ruling in their deen. Why? Because of so it's extremely important at home. And what the parents teach at home is extremely important. And these methods, they don't get work in 1 day or 2 days. They'll work after a week or a month or a year. If one method doesn't work, try a second and a third. If 5 don't work, if this person doesn't work, go to another person. You can't ever stop and you can't ever give up. There's no excuse for this thing. Don't be pessimistic, be optimistic. Don't be all or nothing. Try step by step, have hikmah and apply, no matter how simple or foolish they might seem. Try them. These are professionals that are speaking, have tried them with other people, with themselves, and it's working. So turn to Allah Azza wa Jal and go with these methods, and don't be that person that shuts things down or thinks that, like a pessimist, that this thing will never work.
I think don't give up and don't despair in the mercy of Allah. They're probably 2 points that we need to focus on here from an Islamic perspective. And I know, Sheikh, that's your take-home message, so I'm not going to touch much on that. There are 2 questions for yourself, Sheikh, and then I think we'll go to our take-home messages, our advices or our key points for tonight, inshallah. Sheikh, the first one is, it's a bit similar to one we've had before, but different context. Do you need to perform ghusl from pre-ejaculation?
Yeah, we spoke about that, No,
we didn't speak about that specifically.
Pre-ejaculation, no. Pre-ejaculation doesn't need ghusl, it needs wudu, and you need to clean the place where that came out. It doesn't break your fast, it doesn't, but it just breaks your wudu.
So the question that came before was regarding wudu. So it does break your wudu, you must clean the area and make your wudu again. But in terms of ghusl, you don't need to make ghusl. Wudu and cleaning the area is sufficient. Perfect. Jazakallah khairan. The other question, and it's a bit personal, so maybe I'm not going to read the question exactly. I'll just paraphrase. A person who has a friend is from overseas. The person claims that their friend is religious. His wife is still overseas. So it's been multiple months where he's been away from his wife, and he's struggling to control himself from his desires. He's been eating less, trying to fast, etc., which I think is the solution is in the question. The question is, what could this person do without his wife? What should this person do to maybe avoid the haram?
SubhanAllah. Look, there's a few things that can be done from Islamic perspective, but I think we're going to touch on those in the final points anyway. So unless Dean has anything to add,
Dean always has something to add.
Inshallah, productive. Look, we have to look at everything that we do in a holistic fashion. So yes, we look at it from a spiritual lens, and we look at it from many different lenses. And obviously we take, what Islam says as first priority. So it's good to see that the brother is trying to eat less, the brother is trying to fast. Is that everything? No, right? Maybe the brother is doing that perhaps, and he's still, not lowering his gaze. So that sexual frustration is building up, that sexual tension is building up. right? Also, renewing your intentions. You know, you are not engaging in zina because you're fearing Allah Azza wa Jal with your wife, right? So remember, you know, that yes, this is a noble cause and you're staying away from this because you want to please Allah Azza wa Jal. You don't want to do the wrong thing by your wife. There's a lot of things one can do from an Islamic perspective. You can do istighfar, right? You can ask Allah Azza wa Jal for forgiveness continuously, and we know the merits of that. And there's many things that we can talk about, but like you mentioned, inshallah, in the take-home section, you know, we'll give the brother
And
inshallah.
we're there now, inshallah, we're there now. So I think it's important to remind the viewers that Ramadan is a crucial time for one to get over their addictions. It's a month in which the shayateen are locked away. It's a month in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it easier for you to recognize that you have the problem and that it's in your hands. The problem's with you. If you continue undertaking this sin or performing this sin whilst the shayateen are locked away, realize that you have control over this sin, that it's in your hands, that you can overcome it. And Ramadan is a month of 30 days in which you can get rid of a habit. Likewise, you can implement new habits. And I know new habits, and I'm sure you will probably touch on this, Dean, are a good way to replace existing bad habits. So Ramadan is a very, very important time. Hence the reason why we decided to talk about this specific topic tonight, inshallah. What I do want to do now, maybe Dean, is if we can move on to methods to overcoming addiction. And with that, please give us those key points. I know you've mentioned some already, but do repeat them for the sake of showing the importance of them as a key point. To inshallah ta'ala wrap with that, bi'idhnillah.
Barakallahu feek. So inshallah, for the online viewers, if you want to bring your, you know, notebooks out, if you want to use your phone and write some notes, write some dot points, I would suggest you do so now, and I'll try and repeat it twice, and I'll say it in a slow fashion, inshallah.
And this will be recorded as well, inshallah, and it will remain on the UMA Facebook and YouTube, so you can always find this talk, inshallah ta'ala, afterwards.
So number one, right, obviously, and I don't want to delve too much in the religious side of things because the Sheikh will do that, inshallah. Obviously, we rely on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the Sheikh, I'm sure, will talk about this as a point, right? Number two, what we can do, we can get involved in a charity, or we can get involved in an organization. We can get involved in the da'wah. And I know, you know, for example, those that might live in a locality here in Sydney, UMA is an example of a place that continuously will keep you busy. Why do I say that? Because productivity is the worst enemy of pornography. So if you're productive, then there's a less chance of you engaging in this particular sin and other sins because you're doing more time for good. So sometimes we may think because we don't watch it, or I'm struggling and I don't want to watch it, this is all I can do. No. My brother and sister, you have plenty of time on your hands, especially with COVID-19 now in Ramadan. You know, charity organizations, you know, they're an essential service. So on top of Ramadan, the month of doing extra a'mal, you can use this time to volunteer. So what I would tell my audience, one thing, to volunteer. This gives you a natural dopamine, serotonin injection in your body, which is a feel-good hormone. So what tends to happen with pornography, this is artificial, right? And this is no good for an individual because the feelings of shame and guilt come with it. But I would opt in for a natural, halal alternative, which is volunteering. So you'll feel good, you'll get those dopamine injections and serotonin injections in you, right? Another point, my brother and sister.
Just on that point, it does two things. So keeping busy does two things. Not only, and these two things both make the battle a lot easier. So what happens is the time that you're actually busying yourself, you're not actually battling this addiction. You're actually preoccupied with something else. You're not thinking about it. You're not wanting it. You're not whatever. You're actually occupying a portion of time that's not even part of the battle anymore. You've cut out half your day now of the battle. The other half now, the amount of time that you have to battle has become a lot less. So one half, it's not even a battle anymore. And the other half, you just have to, because you still have to eat and drink and go here, bathroom and shower, and you still have to, you know, go, whatever it may be. So the time that's left is a lot less, and the battle becomes a lot less. So it's actually less strenuous on you. Add to that, like you said, the benefits of volunteering and getting the dopamine, from things like sadaqah and so on. plus the sins that are wiped away through sadaqah. Yani it works on several levels.
It's a double whammy. There's also what we can do, my brothers and sisters, avoid isolation, right? We know what isolation does to an individual. Isolation, right, in the criminal system, in the jail system, this is a punishment. Why do we isolate ourselves for, right? So don't isolate yourselves, because what's going to happen, you're going to isolate yourself, you're going to stay away from people, especially when it comes to pornography addiction. You know, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, pornography is something still that isn't done in public. Pornography, so if I jump on social media, Facebook, and I host a watch party, I'm not going to host a watch party watching pornography. I'm going to I'm going to host a party watching a lecture. So pornography is something done in isolation, as opposed to maybe drugs and alcohol, which is done in public, pubs, clubs, casinos, so on and so forth. So if you suffer from this sin, avoid the isolation. Keep yourself busy with the point we mentioned before, right? And now you can see it's not just I do one thing and that's going to be my solution. No, the solution is many things. It's many different factors.
Covering all the gaps.
Of course, covering every single gap. A lot of people watch pornography in the shower, right? They take their phones in the shower. A lot of phones now are waterproof, and they will watch this in the shower. So limit your time in the shower.
Or just don't take your phone.
And that's another point. Don't take your phone. And if you watch it in the bedroom, where a lot of people watch it in the bedroom because it's a private space, their doors are closed, right? We mentioned before, keep your phones outside, right? So there's many tips, my brothers and sisters, and maybe something I wanted to end with, and this is the key here. This is something we want to write and we want to hang it up there. Implement what you learn. Implement what you learn. We're going to hear lots of different tips. You're going to watch many different videos, whether it's from us, whether it's from other people. You're going to have so much content come your way. We're not short of practical tips and advice. I'll tell you that now. We're not short of it. You type it in Google, you type it in YouTube, and you'll find different websites and different videos telling you practical ways to overcome this addiction amongst any other addiction. But the key, and similar to the Quran, right? Implement what you learn. And if you actually make that a point, right, just like the companions when they would memorize the Quran in the time of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, they would memorize 8, implement the 8, move on to the next, right? Not like us maybe today, you know, in different institutions, we will just churn through, you know, ajza, bang, 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 1 year, 2 years, Allahu Akbar. But Surah Al-Fatiha, I don't know what it means. So the key for any aspect in your life is implement what you learn. And I can guarantee you, you know, Allah Azza wa Jalla with His tawfiq and having true reliance on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and applying many different practical tips, which I can send them to you and you can post them up, inshallah, on the page.
You can do it yourself, inshallah, afterwards.
Done. Barakallahu feek. These are many tips that we can watch and learn from and implement that will help.
Jazakallah khairan, Deen. I would actually like you to do it yourself, inshallah. So
Done.
if the brothers and sisters viewing maybe don't have your contacts, I can get you on Facebook because you are a point of contact to help someone that is struggling, inshallah. Sheikh Omar, I do want to move on to yourself to talk about or to give us some practical tips from an Islamic perspective. But one thing before that, and if you can please touch on that and then move on to the tips. We spoke a bit about youth, we spoke a bit about parents, we spoke about individuals and families. Partners is another thing where you find that there's a good effect, I mean not in a good way, but there's an effect, a large effect on how important is it to sort of fill your partner in so that he or she can help you. When do you do it? Where do you draw the line? Should you abstain from it? Because I mean, if your partner knows, or she doesn't, or he doesn't know, and they find you, it's almost a betrayal, right? That trust is sort of broken. So do you tell them? When do you tell them? Will they be the person that takes your phone when you go to the shower? I think it's important that we touch on that just briefly, inshallah, with a tip from an Islamic perspective, and then move on to the take-home messages.
So this is a different aspect. We're having partners that are complaining because they know their partners are on this and they're doing 1, 2, 3, 4 and they can't keep up with them, or they're just viewed as sexual objects now, they want nothing else from them other than that, or they're demanding too much in the bedroom. And then you have the other section where, or the people who don't know what their partners are up to, and their partners keep it hidden out of guilt, out of shame, and they know it's haram, they're trying to overcome it, whatever it is. Maybe you should have asked Mr. Dean about this, but I'm not sure if they should tell their partners or not. Sometimes you could do more harm than good. Obviously, part of the practical tips, and I'm sure Dean has a lot more he didn't mention, and even the ones he did mention, he can expand on them a lot, which is unfortunate because maybe we should have focused on that today even more so, because that's what people are going to take home, yani. One of the what's it called is the buddy system, is to find someone appropriate to help you through this, who you can lean on in times when you're on the verge and on the border. The spouse isn't always the right person. So if it's a wife that has an issue, to tell her husband, he might react. He might find that as a betrayal, especially as a man, or whatever it may be. Vice versa with the woman. A lot of times it's happened where the spouse has found out and they can't be neutral about it. They're emotionally invested. This is their husband or their wife. So they actually can't let it go. They actually get dirty. They actually get upset. They actually get angry and it's betrayal until it leads to divorce. So the buddy system is a system that works. You have to, that's why I said in the beginning, seek professional help, because he'll be able to help you and direct you to the right person. That could be that buddy. So the trigger points that Mr. Dean was speaking about, shower or what's it called, at night or in the bedroom, in the, what's it called, at certain times, isolation, that's a trigger point. Whatever it is, movies, that could be the trigger. Identifying the trigger points, a professional will help you with that. And then the actual steps of overcoming this, you might know 5 or 10 steps, but he'll help you identify who or what or which method to use out of those. So that's with the spouse. I'm not sure if you should seek professional help, get the advice of the professional, see if he advises for you to tell your wife based on what you can inform him of your wife's character or type, or husband for that matter, and go from there. I can't say do it because that could have severe repercussions, and I can't say don't do it because he might need someone that close to him to be the person that's helping him.
Well, I assume you'll probably say the same thing.
Barakallahu feek, golden advice. I opt in with the same advice. I'm currently seeing a married couple, between the 40 and 50 years old bracket. And he made the mistake of telling his wife. So even though now he hasn't consumed pornography for about close to a year, he's going through the same things with his wife now, feelings of betrayal and distrust. So what I would do, like you said, and find an accountability partner or a buddy system. Most importantly, speak to a professional. And when you reach out to a professional or an accountability partner, make sure it's someone who's mature. You'll find more, a professional comes from a position of non-judgment, right? So the professional's job is not to judge you. You could come in with a beard, thawb, a niqab. We're not here to judge. This is not my role as a professional to judge, right? So speak to an accountability partner. That would most definitely be the advice, not your spouse, and also a professional.
Excellent. Barakallah feek. Jazakallah khairan for that.
SubhanAllah. And he actually, just one last point, sometimes telling the spouse multiplies the issue. From a psychological perspective, there's more strain and pressure on the person, but also physically. So if my spouse or his or her spouse, her husband, finds out that they're doing this, it's a form of cheating, then they're not going to sleep with each other. Then that's going to cause more stress and more pressure and more desire towards this action. I know we said marriage isn't a solution, but it does help. So if now she can't come next to him or he can't come next to her, then that problem is going to multiply from that person from several angles. 1, psychologically, the stress and the pressure and the judgment, and 2, from the lack of now what's it called, intimacy.
Any last comments, Sheikh, from you?
Last comments, so I don't go through my points, inshallah.
Of course.
Are we too late?
That's what I'm talking
No, if
about.
we've gone overboard.
No, look, I think you can do it briefly, inshallah.
Briefly, inshallah. I'll try briefly. It's never
There's
worked.
no
but
brief with Sheikh Omar.
I'll try.
You
and
always
try.
try to tell him briefly, but yani, like, and he knows.
You know it's coming. SubhanAllah. No, I'll try.
Yalla, tikal
So the first and foremost, obviously, from an Islamic perspective, once you've identified, then is make tawbah. Make tawbah, turn to Allah Azza wa Jal. My dear brothers and sisters in Islam, you have to understand that even if you've done this 1,000 times, and if you've made tawbah 1,000 times, if you're sincere about the 1,001st time that you do tawbah, it's all the previous sins are forgiven, and then you're now up to the sin once. So you've done it 999 times, and each one of those times you've made tawbah, and you've promised. Some people even make oaths that I'm never going to do it again. If you do it 1,000th time, that's counted as number one if your previous tawbahs were what's it called, sincere. So make tawbah. I want to ask you for something, and the brother and the sister that is serious about making tawbah, I want one teardrop from you. One teardrop, my dear brothers and sisters in Islam, one teardrop will allow the eye never to enter the hellfire. One teardrop. إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يَخْشَوْنَ رَبَّهُمْ بِالْغَيْبِ لَهُمْ مَغْفِرَةٌ وَأَجْرٌ كَبِيرٌ. So alone, by yourself, while you're making tawbah, drop one tear. One tear out of your eyes, inshaAllah, can promise you on shade on the day when there's no shade except Allah's shade. Make sincere tawbah. Number two, dua. Only Allah Azza wa Jal can help. Beg, cry, ask, seek, scream out, Ya Rabb, I can't do it without you. And Allah, we can't. We can't do anything without Allah. We can't do anything without Allah's help. The scholars, they say sometimes a good deed can take a person to hellfire, and a bad deed can take a person to Jannah. How? The good deed that this person did made him proud and arrogant for the rest of his life, so he entered hellfire. And the bad deed this person did made him so regretful and in such a state of istighfar and tawbah for so long that it entered him into Jannah. So don't ever doubt the tawbah. The Prophet ﷺ actually said, whoever seeks, wants, would be chaste and modest, Allah will keep him chaste and modest. This is a promise from Allah Azza wa Jal. Ask him and he will give you, and one beautiful dua to help actually change your actual internal inclinations is Allahumma habbib ilayna al-iman wa zayyinhu fi qulubina وَكَرِّهِ إِلَيْنَا الْكُفْرَ وَالْفُسُوقَ وَالْعِصْيَانِ. So you're actually asking Allah Azza wa Jal to make iman and good actions be beloved to you in your heart, and to make you hate the kufr and the bad actions and the evil and the fawahish. This actually constantly, imagine in that sincere dua where you're shedding that tear, you make this dua and Allah actually changes your inclinations. You don't even want it or desire it or what's it, need it as much as you did before. Number three, trust in Allah and strive. We touched on that a bit. Trust in Allah. Allah's telling you there's a way out of this. Allah's telling you that there's methods that you could use. Allah's telling you that if you strive and you work in my path, I will help you. And the ayah is clear in the Quran. Allah Azza wa Jalla says, وَالَّذِينَ جَهَدُوا فِينَا لَنَهْدِيَنَّهُمْ سُبُلَنَا. Those who strive for us, we will surely guide them to our ways. So Allah Azza wa Jalla will help as long as you strive and you sacrifice. What does that mean? That means you will struggle. That means you will fall. You will make mistakes. You will come back and try again and fall and make mistakes, and it will be hard. But if you strive and you struggle for Allah Azza wa Jal, Allah Azza wa Jal will definitely help you.
Inshallah.
Trusting in Allah Azza wa Jal is a big part of it as well. You have to actually trust and believe Allah when He tells you it's better for you not to do this. Some people, they know it's haram, but they don't see their lives without this action. And it's actually happened. Mashaykh will say that going to Hajj, can you imagine that? The Sheikh is going to Hajj. One of his students will tell him, Sheikh, ask Allah to help me get rid of all my sins except for this. I was joking. But was he? He said, is that attached? That he actually doesn't want to leave it. He wants it. He wants it part of his life. And some people, some of the young shabab, they do this growing up. Even the brothers and sisters, I need to know before marriage. I need to know what needs to be done. I need to know the actions. I've got to impress her. I got to know what he's going to do to me or what he's going to expect from me. You know what I mean? So they actually don't want this to be not part of their life. So we have to trust in Allah Azza wa Jal firstly and foremost that my life would be better without this action. If you do this and you strive, wallahi, my dear brothers and sisters, you don't know the amount of potential and skill and talents and things that you can offer, the greatness you can reach in this world by overcoming your desires and unraveling that skill and potential that's suffocated with this addiction. How could you ever know you had a skill or potential in something if you're spending 2, 3, 5, 20, 30, 50 hours a week behind the screen? There's no way you're going to ever identify or bring out that greatness that Allah Azza wa Jalla has put within you. Number 4 was mentioned, follow up a bad deed with a good deed. The Prophet ﷺ in the hadith to Abu Dhar, he tells him, if you do a sin, فَعَلْتَ, he says, if you do a sin on purpose, he mentioned on purpose, not an accidental sin. One you've made tawbah for, and then an hour later you went intentionally did it. When you do a sin intentionally, immediately follow it up with a good deed. And Abu Dhar asked him, Ya Rasulullah, is saying La ilaha illallah a good deed? He goes, it is the greatest of good deeds. So dhikr, it cleanses the heart, especially La ilaha illallah, the best of dhikr, and obviously istighfar and things like that which are relevant to the sin that you're doing. And number 5, the last one, is never give up. My dear brothers and sisters, and never give up. It's actually haram to give up. وَلَا تَقْنَطُوا مِنْ رَحْمَةِ اللَّهِ. Do not give up in the mercy, in the hope of Allah Azza wa Jal. It's actually haram to give up. Why? One, because Allah ordered us not to give up. That's one. Number two, when I give up, what's the first thing, Dana, you're going to get this, man. What's the first thing someone says when he's going to give up?
I can't do this.
I can't do this anymore. What does Allah Azza wa Jal say in the Quran? Allah will never overburden you with more than you can handle. How dare you say, I can't do this anymore? Allah's telling you, yes, you can. I promised you that you're never going to be overburdened more than you can. Isn't that indirectly, I don't want to say it, but like how dangerous is that word? I can't do this anymore. Subhanallah. Never give up. It's haram because Allah ordered it. Because number two, Allah, it's as if saying, Allah, you overburdened me more than I can handle indirectly. And number three, my dear brothers and sisters in Islam, you have to understand something. There's only submission to Allah and everything else is submission to shaitan. When I give up, who have I submitted to? I'm submitting to shaitan. He's the one that wants me to give up. He's the one that wants me to isolate. He get the wolf attacks the stray sheep. He's the one that wants me alone. And the Prophet ﷺ, I'll end up with this hadith. The Prophet ﷺ mentions the hadith, was actually very, it's going to probably be weird for the one that hasn't heard it for the first time, because it's not talking about the hypocrites. It's not talking about, the sinners or the fusaq. It's talking about the believers. And this is what's weird about this hadith, or like blows your mind when you first hear it. The Prophet ﷺ gives a hadith about a relationship between a believer and a sin. A believer and a sin. Can you believe that? So he's got a relationship, not a one-off. A relationship between a believer and a sin. He says there is no believing slave of Allah except that he has a sin that he continually commits. It could be from time to time, every few months, or constantly and consistently, subhanAllah, and it never leaves him until he dies, until he leaves this world. So there are some people that are like this, my dear brothers and sisters. There are going to be some of our kids will have this issue. It doesn't have to necessarily be pornography. It might be anything, it might be gambling. Like I know brothers that don't have food, they're starving, they don't have food in their fridge. When the Centrelink bill is going to come in on Wednesday, from Monday they start shaking, they walk into the TAB with all the alcohol and all the women and everything, and they go straight to the gambling machine, they start gambling. Everyone's got their addiction, right? Everyone's got their problem. Prophet ﷺ, there's going to be some believers that have a sin that they do from time to time, others that will do it consistently and constantly, and they will never leave them until they leave this world. The Prophet ﷺ, he says, verily the believer is created mufattan. So he will be constantly tested. And tawwab, he will constantly repent. And then nasiya, he will constantly forget and then go into that sin again. And then tawbah, and then forget and then fall into that sin. And tawbah again and again. And then the Prophet ﷺ said, and when he is reminded, he remembers. He's the difference. This is why this person isn't a hypocrite. When he is reminded, when he remembers, he makes the tawbah. He forgets again, or becomes a bit negligent, or some trigger point triggers him again, he falls into it again, and then he remembers. Someone reminds him, not get out of my face, or no, I can't do it, or whatever it may be, and he makes tawbah again. My dear brothers and sisters in Islam, if you are fighting for Allah, inshallah you have a good end. Inshallah. If you don't give up, and if what does Allah want from us? Allah wants to see us fight for Him, right? Strive for Him, that's all He wants. He doesn't want, the outcome is irrelevant. If I spent my whole life struggling in His path for His sake from something which He tested me with, and I've done well. So never give up, my dear brothers and sisters in Islam. Never ever give up. Keep fighting that fight, even if it stays with you till death. Inshallah it won't. Even if it does, keep fighting it. Bi-idhnillah. Inshallah that person will die at a time in good, a time of tawbah, rather than the time of fisq. Bi-idhnillah.
I wanted to add on to that, man. May Allah bless you. If we use an English term for that last hadith you mentioned, we'll come up with a word called relapse. That's what it is. He does it, does good, does bad, does good, does bad, does good. That's called relapse, right? We have to understand on this journey there will be relapses. There will be relapses. Drugs, alcohol, gambling, pornography addiction, part of that journey you will relapse. But, like the Sheikh said, right, once I remember, and you'll see that as a common theme, and I'm sure you see that with your clients that you may see or you may speak to, you'll see, they'll fall into this sin, and then they'll be reminded. They'll be like, yeah, Allah, I'm going to stop this, I'm never going to do this again. And the battle continues day in and day out, week in and week out, month in and month out. So we have to understand, my brothers and sisters, that relapse is part of this journey. And once we understand that, because you'll hear like a lot of the sentiment that comes out, I can't do this, I've tried everything. So that's what happens when you relapse, and you over and over and over again, you start despairing. Nothing can help me, nothing can save me, I've tried everything. But inshallah, always remember Allah Azza wa Jal, and inshallah, it is He that will cure us from these different addictions.
Barakallah fiqh.
Of course,
Jazakallah
subhanAllah,
khairan.
it's link it back to the principles of Islam. We all know them, and we repeat them again and again, and we read them every day in the surah. Like Al-Mulk is supposed to be read every single day. الذي خلق الموت والحياة ليبلوكم أيكم أحسن. This life will never stop being a test. The thing that people don't understand, that even if I get over this addiction, my test will just come somewhere else. And if I don't, it will just stay here. At the end of the day, the test will never stop till we die. Our tests will never stop. So apply those principles here. If I'm addicted to something, it's just here and not somewhere else. And if it wasn't here, it would be somewhere else. This life, the core principle of it is testing to see, to prove to me and you. So in the akhirah, Allah says, I wouldn't have done that. But you did it. SubhanAllah. So may Allah Azza wa Jal keep us firm on the path and keep us in a state of never ever giving up, no matter what happens.
Ameen ya Rabb. Barakallah fiqh. And I think tonight's been a great step into the right direction, which is addressing these taboo topics that are affecting the Muslim community. And I want to thank the both of you, Jazakumullah khairan, Sheikh Omar and Brother Deen, for being with us tonight and addressing a topic that I know is uncomfortable but is very important. Ikhwani, there you have it. Pornography is real. It is in our community, it's in the youth and it's in the old. And what we need to do is combat these issues. We need to come clean, we need to be honest to ourselves, and we need to try our best to overcome these issues. If you know someone that is facing these issues, be that support for them, be that buddy for them. If you yourself are being trialed with these issues, come back to to Allah Azza wa Jal, turn to the professional and seek help. And a note for the viewers tonight, that Brother Deen is someone who he himself deals with these issues, and as well at the UMA Center, we do offer psychology and counseling that are free of charge. We have a male psychologist and counselor for the brothers, and a female psychologist and counselor for the sisters. The flyer and the details are going to be in the comments of this video, so please, if you want to reach out, feel free to. It's free of charge. You will have multiple sessions. They're absolutely anonymous. No one needs to know, but do reach out. Do seek that help. Make the intention in Ramadan where the shayateen are not around, where it's only you and Allah Azza wa Jal. Make that intention, turn to Allah Azza wa Jal, and overcome these habits so that we can become better people and increase our chances to enter the Jannah. Jazakumullah khairan for being with us tonight. I ask Allah Azza wa Jal to bless you, to grant you paradise, and allow every single one of you to overcome whatever addiction or bad habits that you have. Ask Allah Azza wa Jal to give you the best of Ramadans, and inshallah you're having a great Ramadan and you will end Ramadan on a high. We will see you every single night at 7:30 p.m. and again next Saturday for this show. Jazakallah khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum assalam.
بارك الله فيكم الله سبحانه وتعالى.